Hi, welcome back to the AI Advantage Show, where we're talking about the skills to thrive in the intelligence age. I'm my host, Meg Smith, and I'm here with my co-host.
Hey, I'm Mark, and we had a great first episode last week. I'm really blown away by the interaction and audience come back with questions and whatnot for us to engage on. Particularly liking that people like this concept of it's skills over knowledge. We need to build the skills over just gaining knowledge. And one of the things that I've been thinking about more and more lately is a concept of you can't live life on somebody else's knowledge. Even though we're talking about skills, right? I'm saying it's critically important that you own your own knowledge. Don't just book learn it. You got to know it, and that's where the skills come in, because there's a piece of knowledge is acquired then applied, it is so much more valuable and usable by you. I read heaps of books. They're other people's knowledge, right? But I take elements out of them and I apply them in my life. Now I talk like they're my knowledge, right? They're my ownership. And the reason why this is important, because the minute you get tested, as in somebody goes or calls bullshit on something you've said, if it's somebody else's knowledge, you potentially will come undone at that point. But if it's your knowledge, you can speak from your experience, your application, it's so much more valuable.
The concept of practice to me has really helped me. And actually, even I was thinking, like, for me, what we're doing right now is practice. You've been podcasting for years. That's a practice you've built and developed. For me, I'm still new and I'm a bit awkward. And I was laughing when we were watching back last week's. And that's why I kind of stumbled in the intro again about my co-host. Last week, I introduced you. You can see the wheels turning in my brain when you go, hey, how's it going? And I think you're talking to me. And I'm like, good, thank you. I'm really good. And it reminded me of when we lived in London and my workmates would be like, you're right, in the morning. And I'm like, yeah, I am all right. Oh, yeah, thanks for asking. I'm great. And they're like, had to tell me 1,000 times, like, it's kind of just how we say hi here.
So true, so true. I do find it a bit funny, yes. And so I did have a giggle last week about that. This week, we want to talk about digital fluency. Meg mentioned that this is what we would look at. By the way, go back and listen to our last podcast or look at it on YouTube, Spotify, etc. if you wish. But we really want to drill in today on digital fluency. And this concept of we can't binge watch 25 years of digital skills in a weekend. And where did this concept come from? Well, up to the year 2000, the years running up to it in IT, a heck of amount of IT training was done because of a scary thing that was happening at that time. There was a lot of fear around a thing called Y2K. And that, that all the computer technology and software in the world was going to stop working at midnight for Y2K because of the way the clock systems had been set up in code to that point. And so there was a heap of training done across the world. And what data shows that after 2000, training budgets in companies pretty much just disappeared. And we've gone the last 25 years since that point with very low, deliberate digital enablement and skill training outside of what people would learn on their job. In other words, they would acquire it through those around them or, Google help for where they needed it. But there was no kind of like formal training done across the organization. And so we need to really be looking now at what are the skills that we need to acquire and really going into a mode of a quote I love from Satya is this learn it all type mindset. You've got to learn it all. We're going into a world where we're constantly going to learn because we're dealing with constant change. One of the questions that came in from the WhatsApp group last week, and we will put links in the show notes of where you can get access to that WhatsApp group to ask questions. So one of the questions that came in was from Danny Cahill, and he asked about change fatigue. One of the things I said last week that I love change, and I might be unique in that. But he said here, change fatigue. Not everyone loves change. Personally, I thrive on it, but I see the opposite in some colleagues or even my youngest daughter who finds change upsetting. What practical advice would you give to people who are naturally resistant to change so that they can embrace it more positively in the age of AI?
This one's definitely for me because Danny and you are similar and different for me. I'm definitely change resistant more by nature. I like to know how things work. I like to know that I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to do. And that can actually embed a bit of the anti-growth mindset, right? So when I heard that Satya quote about learn it all, that's what I adopted, this approach from a posture of I want to be a know-it-all, which my brothers loved to call me when I was growing up, where you feel like I don't want to get it wrong, so I have to operate from this idea that I know what I'm talking about, to a scenario of being open to hear that other people know different things than you and you're really curious about that. So for me, the thing that helped me go from being resistant to change to practice being good at it, the first thing was curiosity. Asking that question, the magic question, how might we on anything? So for that question, I think I also shared last week was, for me, was how might I use AI to help me in my work, to future-proof or become future-ready for my career and whatever the AI world that we're going to live in is going to mean. But then I did my change management certification with ProSci, which I learned so much from that process. And one of the things that I took away from that was that we might talk about organizational change in corporates and in enterprises, but as if it's this big nebulous organism itself. But actually, that's not really a thing. Organizational change can only happen when individuals go on an individual change journey, a personal change journey. And so when we think about those personal change journeys, every time that change is ahead of me, I'm now building on whatever legacy I've had from my changes in the past. So if I've had positive experiences of a change, I'm going to be more likely to be open to the next change that comes my way. But if I've had, a really bad change experience, I'm likely to be more resistant. So because of the rate of change, the technology is changing, how we use it is changing, the data that it's built off is changing. There's much more change than I had been used to in my career before that in working with technology. So then I had to look at it as not a quarterly change or an annual change as far as learning how to use something, but almost a daily change. And so for me, what I did was make the changes a lot smaller. Rather than thinking, I need to learn how to use AI, make them as small as possible and set yourself up for success so that it can be a positive change experience, so that then, you're approaching the next one the next day with that positive, curious growth mindset, rather than feeling a bit stung. And when we're stung, we kind of retreat into ourselves and bury our heads in the sand a little bit.
I like that. So remember, if you got a question, join the WhatsApp group and we'll ask you always if you're okay with us putting your name and face up with the question. Otherwise, you can be anonymous, but we're here to answer those and garner even input from everybody else that's on the show. So if you've got comments, let us know. I want to talk about digital fluency and why it's important. And when I think about digital fluency, it's about applied, confident use of digital tools. Right? Applied, confident use of digital tools. I see some people make some crazy errors in that they don't have the confidence with the tools that they're using. And so then their application of those tools creates risk, and often risk for themselves. And so if I break down, what data literacy looks like in, what are the building blocks of it? It covers, data fluency. It covers data literacy. So it's part of it, understanding your data estate and the data that you're using and the data you've been provided. Now let's take the word data off and just consider this like information. It's that request somebody has made to you for something via, let's say, social media, and you're caught off guard by it. It's understanding the context of that. It's problem solving is another key level of this. How do I solve problems? Do I have a systematic way of dealing with problems and challenges in your interactions with data, right? With that data estate. It's around collaboration and working with others and not just deciding to react or go with your own idea. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind, Meg, is I remember you were working with a customer earlier this year and they did a social media post of a Miro board that had content in it. They had abstracted away who the customer was, but on the content cards on the board was the names of the individual people that had submitted their ideas. And of course, that wouldn't be hard to work out with a few searches online who potentially it was, then the associated organization. It was And this is where running an idea before you put it into the public domain against somebody else's set of eyes might be a good thing to do in part of that collaboration. So it is part of that content creation story, but a key element, and really the examples I've given so far, is cybersecurity. We need to lean into cybersecurity like we have never done. And the reason is because it's not just bad actors anymore coming up with ideas. It's taking a bad actor that leverages AI to scale their bad acting like never before. I had somebody on my podcast last week around what is happening in the digital identity space. So it's not so much when people come to validate their ID after the fact, they're intercepting it before somebody creates their digital ID. So through that digital ID process, entering that workflow surreptitiously to actually get their, a third party's identity put in place so then they can carry out malicious acting. And of course, AI makes it so much easier to do this. One of the examples that we used in a major hotel chain, they test questions, so they called high help desk, and social engineering is often a real key part of what's been done. And they had 3 ID checks, the typical ones was, what's your pet's, what was your first pet's name? What's your favorite, what was your mother's maiden name? Where did you grow up? And increasingly, these digital tails have been dropped through our social media messages, etc. over time, and AI can harvest them so quickly to build a profile. In this hotel situation in the US, they were able to give the 3 questions, got ultimately a high level of control, and then disrupted, not for 24 hours, but weeks on end, this major hotel's digital estate. Part of it is AI literacy, and then finally, and I mean, I'm brushing over some of these, but and because each of them are detailed in their own right, but digital ethics comes into this as well. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, and so you start to challenge yourself on. You've got some incredibly powerful tools, and with great power, as the saying goes, great responsibility, and so there's a need as we use these tools more and more to upskill ourselves in cybersecurity and digital ethics, making sure that just because we can, should we be doing something a particular way? And if I was to put all this together, it comes down to trust. We are living in a world where it's going to become harder and harder to trust anybody, I feel, or anything. Ultimately, we're going to, I think, get to the point we're not going to be able to trust our eyes or our ears because the deception level with AI can be so high. And therefore, we're going to have to go and understand and increase our skills in this area to really be able to have our brain kick in with critical thinking whenever something doesn't sound quite right. Meg, I know you've had some interesting conversations just on the last weekend around these scenarios.
Yeah, I think for me, it's becoming clear that whatever it is right now, whatever our approach, whatever our best practice to personal cybersecurity, to what we share, it will change, and we need to be prepared for that, to adapt to that. So, for example, you were talking about the information we share on social media. That's changed for a lot of people today compared to what they would have shared on Facebook when it first came out, or what they, the amount of information that was put out at that time. I personally don't share the same kinds of information. I'm aware, a big one that I've seen cybersecurity advisors or influencers talk about lately is not sharing real-time holiday pictures, or not sharing in real time, hey, I'm looking forward to going on my holiday. Oh, I'm on my holiday. Like the way that someone that's, particularly if you have a public social media, they are then able to use that information to maybe go visit your home while you're not there, things like that, right? Like really nefarious uses of that. So when I was talking to some of my friends over the weekend, it's become part of the conversation and in my personal life, whereas a couple of years ago when I was at Google and doing my security training, there was a very different mindset of I'm at work and this is relevant at work. But now it's all blending together, right? And a personal example that came up was this idea of how bad actors are taking people's identity and using it online. So one example was that identity was stolen via a driver's license, and the driver's license was somehow obtained by this person and used online to order a really expensive phone and sign up for an expensive phone plan. Go into the store, click and collect it, use the driver's license as the identity to sign up for the account. That person never paid a cent on that account, and the person whose identity they stole has that debt against their name, and they have to go through the process of proving that couldn't possibly have been them. And then the other example was, say, an online tax account where you're like in New Zealand, we've had the ability to submit our tax returns online for, I don't know, I think since I started working, so a long time. And it's come to other countries, that we've personally worked in as well in the time that we've worked there. And this was in Australia, saying that it's becoming more common for people to be able to log into someone else's tax account and change their tax return details, submit wrong numbers that mean a refund is then issued. Guess who they issue the refund to? That bad actor, while they're in the account, has also changed the bank account details to their own bank accounts. And then that money is sort of done. So you can jump straight into, well, the tax office should have better protections than that and, verifications and all that. And that's absolutely true. And they probably will, right? They're putting it in. But this is that thing that we all need to be aware of, both in the work that we might do, but also in our personal lives, that it's that combination of people and technology, and both behaviors of people and of technology are changing so much now that how you approach, your safety of your tax return might be different. Like, have you got a really strong password? Have you got multi-factor authentication? Are you using a passkey when that's offered, when that's available? Things like that, right? And that comes back to that change point, which is we don't like change, and we're like, oh, we only log into our tax account maybe a couple times a year. Don't worry about it. I'll do it next time. I'll add a backup email address next time. I'm guilty of that. You're probably not, but I am.
Yeah. So in both those stories that Meg gave, those are not hearsay stories. They were all, when we say those stories were actually all one-to-one, like Meg knows the lady that happened regarding her credit and her phone. Meg knows the lady that works in a tax office or accounting business that's happened multiple times in Australia this year. So these are all recent tense examples.
And those are scenarios that had never occurred to me, not in my own approach to my own personal identity online. And I think that's a little bit the trap, right? And it is a trap to avoid, thinking that it could never happen to me because I work in tech, or it could never happen to me because I know, or even just not being aware that it's possible, because we can't be aware of all the possible scams. Instead, we're looking at, let's talk about this stuff so that when it does happen to me or you or someone they're not stuck in this thing going, oh, I should have known. I feel so ashamed. I won't tell anyone because I should have known better and I feel really silly now. That's the worst thing that can happen. We do need to be talking about these things because we all have different experiences. We all come at it with different sort of pre-existing knowledge. Let's share it and normalize it so that, that's maybe one of the ways that we can protect each other.
I like it. Microsoft, this concept is actually in IT, which is assume zero trust. Right? And reduce the areas that you don't have enough knowledge in, start building those. Like run a prompt with your favorite AI tool and say, hey, I need to increase my digital fluency. Give me a list of topics that I should get up to speed in, and then and then quiz me on my current, it'll create a dynamic assessment for you. Quiz yourself and then go, what skills do I need to apply, or what skills do I need to learn to increase my literacy by 30%, right? And then go out and fill the gaps, right, that you have. And, here's a gap that I just plugged just this weekend. The more I've looked at Facebook's ethical policies has led me to make personal decisions. One personal decision, I no longer am logged into or have access to Facebook on my phones, right? So that means Instagram, gone. Messenger, removed, right? And I've got so many conversations that happen on Messenger, particularly with family. I am no longer prepared to have conversations there on that app. I'm no longer prepared to use Facebook. I'm no longer prepared to use Instagram for, content interaction. I just saw a post this week where what's happening, and it comes back to, do you trust the organization behind this, right? And that's, for me, that's what it's come down to. I saw that in Instagram, they had switched on a feature to take your video and any audio. So if, let's say you've done a reel, and to use that for whatever they want to use it for. They're basically giving them the rights, and the setting in the settings, and I can't get over, if you go to the settings now on something like Instagram, the settings there's like hundreds of settings now. It used to be one or two. Now there's hundreds, and what they're doing is confusing people with so many settings. So they'd put the setting in place and switched it on by default. So unless you're literate, and I happen to be I saw a video from Scott Hanselman at Microsoft and said, how bad is this? They are taking, in this case, particularly your audio, print, and they can use that for whatever they want to use it for. And by default, it's on. And so this is about increasing your digital literacy and kind of moves that you can make.
And I had the similar thing with Aura Ring. I've been loving my Aura Ring, a wearable device that helps people use it particularly for like sleep improvement, sleep tracking. I particularly wanted it for cycle tracking, so getting insights about how my body works, how my energy works, how I can get better from it. And I was loving it. But then I saw last week they've signed a deal. They're a Finnish company. I'd had what I'd call maybe like an amber flag when I signed up to Aura Ring. So I wasn't going in blind. I knew that I was giving a lot of personal information, health information to this company. And I weighed it up and thought, hey, what I know about them, and what I know about the benefits I'll get, I'm happy to make that trade-off. And then the more I had been thinking about it, the more I was getting a little bit of the like and me vibes, where, now in hindsight, what people know today, a lot of people are maybe regretful of sending their DNA swabs to a company that then, went through liquidation, and there was a possibility of all that data being sold to anyone that would buy it for whatever means they want, right? And so Aura Ring has, in the last week, had to go through this like, oh no, it's okay, we're not actually partnering with the Department of Defense, which has a new name now, in the States. It's a very specific thing that we're doing for people in the military. And I'm like, I read the press releases. I can understand that maybe today they're not using my data, but now I'm no longer personally happy with the business relationships Aura has with Palantir and other companies that my amber flag has turned red. It's gone red, and I don't trust, coming back to that word trust, I don't trust that, particularly as a woman, I want to give that data away. So for me personally, I saw it and I was like, great, I'm done. I took it off. I'm not putting it back on. We share these stories not to say this is the right decision for you. Hopefully what we're trying to do is talk through how we made those decisions. And those are the things we're interested in, is like this framework for decision making, for gathering information, for verifying against your goals and your values to make a decision that feels right for you.
Yeah, I like that. What this whole process, because I was the one that introduced Aura Ring into our family, and what it's done for me, and even, you can still see I'm still wearing mine, but what it's done for me is to realize is that no matter how good the intention of the company that you have bought a service from or something today, they are collecting data. And where is that data going to go the minute somebody offers a fat enough check to actually acquire that data from them? And this is the case that's happened here. It's going to the Department of War. Now, the new name for what was previously DOD in the US. And that raises questions, right? Who's going to have my data? Yes, and they all say it's anonymized, et cetera, until the point that all of a sudden you realize it's not. So it comes down to trust again. Who do you trust? How are you going to apply trust in everything you do? And this whole idea is not meant to make you freak out and go, well, that's it, I'm going to become a Luddite and have nothing to do with tech. Absolutely not. I'm leaning in, but just become aware, run that sequence in your mind. What does this mean? And really, for me, that is about this concept that I've heard more and more coming from Microsoft is going one level deeper. Whatever your skill level is, what would it take to go one level deeper in that skill? If you're looking at it from an AI perspective and you've asked AI a question or you've basically riffed on a concept, you've done some research, and let's say some new terms have come up and acronyms and things like that, don't just accept them. Ask AI to explain itself. Gain the knowledge. If you're, for me, I've never been a coder, but now I'm seriously looking at developing my coding skills. I don't want to become a full-time coder, but I want to be better than what I am right now. And so my one level deeper is going into that area of coding and becoming more aware of how and why I should apply it in my life. So wherever you are, ask yourself that question. What does one level deeper look like for you in your understanding from a digital fluency perspective, and then all those sub kind of categories that I highlighted?
Yeah, it was our friend Donna Sakar who said that at Dynamics Minds. We heard her say that as part of the keynote. And it's something that I keep coming back to in different points. We need to move away from this idea, I think, of boxes that we've had in roles in the past, particularly in technology. Everyone, no matter what your role is, if you can look at where I am right now, how can I understand one level deeper? That might be AI fundamentals. That might be doing, a 90-minute course that explains how large language models work. That was where I started. Now I'm looking at different things that relate to the work that I'm doing. I just did my Microsoft Teams admin certification, and because I'm really interested in Copilot, and that helps me understand how data is structured and works inside of that. And I got lost half the time. Like, I'm not pretending that was easy for me, but now I've got a that one level deeper. So I want to go again to a question. Danny shared this question with us, and I really thought, Mark, you should answer it because so many of the tips and tricks that I've learned have come from you. So the question is, tips and tricks. I shared a 20 questions technique to use with Copilot. Ask me 20 questions to draw my ideas out. But what other simple, powerful tips or techniques do you recommend for getting better results and increasing productivity when working with AI chat assistants?
Awesome. So I'm going to use Copilot as my surface here, M365 Copilot. And I start with researcher. So if I'm going to take on a project to do something, I will start with researcher and I will gather as much information to this conversation that I'm going to have with AI. So I will give it parameters. I'll ask it to ask me questions before it then starts the research function. After that researching bit is done and I've got all that context, oftentimes I will give it context about what I'm going to do. What is the project? Let's say it's a proposal response, or it might be writing something, whatever it is. I will then go, okay, I now understand of research. And by the way, I generally read all that out of researcher, but I'm not going to use that for my next prompt. That is to give me, it's to educate me on whatever topic, customer, person, etc. that I'm going to take on. What I then do is start a new chat session. And as I say, if using Copilot, I'll make sure GTP5 is selected. And I will then start with context. So context is providing, so my first kind of mega prompt, that first big, large prompt will be around, here's all the files that I have. Here's access to Microsoft Graph. Sorry, I want you to go to Microsoft Graph and I want you to identify any Teams conversations, OneDrive locations, SharePoints, documents, etc., relevant to this topic I'm going to focus on. And I'll make sure that I've, / and bought all those. So I want to make sure it's looking at the stuff I want it to look at, as well as going beyond to find the stuff that I'm not aware of that might be sitting on our corporate network that would help me do what I needed to do. So I've given it context. I don't want it to look at the ocean. I want it to look at the little pond of information that I have given it as we go in. And then, let's say I'm writing a proposal. I would never say, write a proposal based on this information, right? It's too broad a prompt. It's too large a question to solve at where we are with AI right now. And so what I would do is that I look at the section headings of my proposal, and then I write a prompt to cover the particular section I'm working on. I've got all the research data, I've provided context, and now I chomp down with prompts just for the specific section. How many words do I want it to be? What do I want it to include? What language, what tone, all those type of things are then ingested as part of that. And then the final thing I'm getting really good at is outputting that data into JSON as a format. So that's JSON. And I often will save those away for future use, because when I go back to introduce a new prompt, I can start with a clean prompt, something that ChatGPT has just recently allowed branching and prompting, which is super cool. But this is what before that, this is what I used to do. So in Copilot, I would extract the JSON, and then I could start a new prompt, but have all that context supplied to it before I started, if I ran out of particularly of the token window that I can actually work with. So yeah, that's what I'm using in answer to Danny's question there.
And my tip that would go like at the end of that, all that work when you've got all those outputs, is to read it out loud. Read it out loud to someone that, usually you're the listener for me, I'm the listener for you, or I'm the reader, to bring that check in that goes, does this sound like me? Am I happy with this? Is there anything in here that shouldn't be in here? Because we know we still need to be checking for hallucinations and things like that, right?
Yeah. And I use an app called Speechify, which is in my browser as well as on my phone. And I get it. So what happens is that when you're using a web-based AI tool, when the prompt gets, you put your prompt in and then it spits out to screen the conversation, I've got a auto function on it where it just the minute it's complete, it starts actually reading it to me the minute it starts building. Because I like to hear it, to hear the tone, to hear the sound, and then I'm like, not quite right. I'll adjust that. But I'm really letting my ears kind of guide me in that respect. So hey, if you've got a question, chuck it into the WhatsApp group. We'll make sure we provide. Here's the access to the group. It's in the show notes. Please join the WhatsApp group. It's only specific, this group, to this podcast, where we're all trying to increase our skills in this space.
Yeah, I think I feel like we've talked a little bit of heavy today. Like, I don't know about you, but I feel a little bit like in the heaviness, and that's not sort of that's not where I want to leave it. Just to share that the point of digital literacy. The difference between digital fluency and digital literacy is that the fluency allows you to go deeper in your understanding and apply all of the things we've talked about in aid of a goal, of an outcome. And once you're able to do that and starting to practice that, there's so much benefit you can get from that. Particular examples that I've personally used lately has been for processes that I don't really understand because I've either never done them before or I've only ever sort of done them once or twice. And we've had a few changes with flights lately, either cancellations or things have changed. And it can be really hard to figure out what are your rights? What are you entitled to? What are you trying to achieve? And what we've found interesting is having gone through, airline websites, the information they give you in an email when those things happen, the things that, it's hard to find a person to call on their websites by design, right? They don't want people to call and ask for a refund that they're entitled to. But ChatGPT or Copilot is amazing for going out, and if I say something like, hey, my flight's been cancelled. I'm stuck here and they've given me a flight in 2 days' time. I've got 2 kids sitting on the floor. I need to get home. I want to get my goal. My goal is I want to get home and I want what I'm entitled to in terms of refund and compensation. And ChatGPT was amazing to give us that, right? We literally had that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. What was interesting in that, I was in the lounge at the airport, and I went and asked their staff what could I do? And they said, you can go on the flight in 2 days' time. I think the staff have been trained not to actually forfeit what you can do. Or I don't know whether they're so busy that they don't want to. And so this is where AI is such a powerful tool to go, provide the context, date, times, 2 children under the age of 4, gave it all that type of information. They proposed 2 days' time. What are our rights? And straight away it went up and looked at the airline's website. It went and looked under the New Zealand law in regards to this, and it spat out everything that we're entitled to. And so then I said, hey, what's the contact center number? Because once again, funny, they make it really hard to find a phone number these days on so many sites. It found the phone number straight away. I called them. I identified myself as a frequent flyer, which got me into the right queue. And I just said, hey, I'm calling, and I understand you will cover this, 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 and this, and this. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Who do I email all our incurred costs that we're about to get? All that just spelt out so simply. Another technique I've used a heap lately is when I want to unsubscribe from a SaaS solution, right? And once again, for some reason, an online provider make it super hard to find out where to cancel your subscription. Super hard. But man, AI is amazing. Here's the product. Here's the service. How do I unsubscribe? Give me a step-by-step on actually, boom, drive straight to the outcome. I often put today's date. I'll say, hey, the date is here. Make sure there's been no changes to this. And it gives me very accurate information how to unsubscribe to something. A friend of mine just this week flicked me. Perplexity had a deal where you could get a 1-year subscription if you linked it to your PayPal account. And I'm like, I'm down for 1 year's subscription. And so I applied it, and then straight after wrote the prompt, how do I unsubscribe, so that in a year's time I don't all of a sudden get a charge on my card that I didn't realize, because it's 12 months later, you've forgotten about it. And so it allows me to, make the choice at the time in a year's time. Do I want to continue this? Just gives me that pause to go, yes, I do want to continue, but I'm not going to just let it roll over.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, we're learning this all the time, right? Next week, we're going to talk about conversation and prompting. There's a lot of prompting guides and best practices, but we're really interested in how do you work that muscle and practice having conversations with AI for a goal. We've just talked about a couple of examples, but we'll dive into that a little bit more next week. Feel free, if you've got questions, please look for the link in the show notes. I think Mike's also going to flash up on screen the link to join the WhatsApp group. There's a couple of awesome people in there already firing questions away. We didn't get to all of them this week, but we'll keep working in what you want to hear, because really at the end of the day, this is to help you. So we want to make sure what we're sharing is helpful.
I love it. This is an audio podcast, but it's also on video format. So it means you can, on YouTube, you can watch it if you want to see the video, and you can also watch it on Spotify, the video format, if you would prefer that over the audio. It's been awesome having you on. Thank you. And we'll see you again next week.
Thank you very much.